The 2024 Tshwane Energy Summit kicks off today. This as liberalization of South Africa's electricity market matures and becomes open to independent power producers to enter into supply agreements, creating competition for state utility Eskom. But Eskom CEO Dan Marokane says that the power utility fully intended for the generation business to continue being a significant player in the local power market. Energy writer for Business Day, Denene Erasmus, brings us more insights from the sidelines of the Tshwane Energy Summit. Denene, an absolute pleasure and a good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon.
I want to get into issues around generation first, then we'll speak about the Tshwane Energy Summit because it's very comforting to know that municipalities are speaking about energy. But let's start off by speaking about, the issue of competition for Eskom and what it means for it to reinvent itself. Also considering, Denene, that the model is still backed quite a bit by coal-fired power stations.
Yes, so it's after the first 100 days in office for the new CEO, Dan Marokane. I think he started to speak to the media a bit more now and sat down for some one-on-one interviews last week to just talk about what his priorities will be as the CEO of Eskom, specifically over the next 3 years. And of course, very high on the list is to bring an end for good to load shedding, but then he is also the CEO in this critical time when Eskom has to implement the unbundling that has been in the works for many years now. And as part of the unbundling, the generation business will have to function as a standalone business. Perception in the energy industry and in the sector is that Eskom generation is going to really struggle, not now, but in the future. We're talking about 20, 30 years into the future to really still be, definitely no longer a majority player, but even a significant player in the energy generation space. And that is as Eskom starts post 2030 now to decommission coal-fired power stations. And then the challenge now for the CEO, Marokane, and the board is to really make those critical decisions about what they want the generation business to look like in the future and what they can and will invest in. And this all has to happen within a very, very strained balance sheet that Eskom sits with. So yes, it's some critical questions and understanding. Eskom now has generation capacity of about 46,000 megawatts, and they're talking about procuring about 2,000 megawatts of renewables within the next 3 years. So we still don't really know exactly where all of the power that they do want to still supply is going to come from, within the next 2 or 3 decades.
Also interesting here, Denene, is the issue, I guess, of electricity becoming cheaper in South Africa. More entrants means that competition will get to that point here. And Eskom's balance sheet, as you said, not the strongest. It does rely on this very, very simple model of generating electricity and then selling it. And that tells me that might also be a pressure point, also be a risk here, because with more entrants and cheap electricity, it means less revenues for Eskom.
No, absolutely. And I think, this is still a challenge for Eskom because they are still not at the tariff level where they want to be. They are still pursuing through NERSA what they call their cost reflective tariff. So we are very likely to continue to see above inflation tariff increases from Eskom, which will, once we see significant amounts of renewables from independent power producers coming on stream at rates that are more competitive than Eskom can supply, we will start seeing real pressure on Eskom to figure out how it can play as a competitive player if it does still want to be significantly a part of generation of power in South Africa.
There's also, of course, what you and I have been speaking quite a bit about lately, what we're seeing at municipalities. Also an important one, that's speaking to distribution. You are out of the Tshwane Energy Summit. Let's talk about this event and maybe the importance of it at this point with municipalities being a pressure point.
So I think the summit is really an opportunity for the metro to talk about how they've already said that they've got this goal of procuring 1,000 megawatts of power from independent producers, and that will bring them very close to getting about half of their total energy need met by independent suppliers. So at the moment, the city's demand is sitting roughly between 2,200 and 2,600 megawatts. And I think, as the Mayor Silje Brink said in the opening session this morning, it's even though we've had sort of going on to 2 months now without load shedding, this does not mean that load shedding is behind us for good. And it also doesn't mean yet that even if we do manage to bring an end to load shedding, that South Africa has that excess power it needs to really achieve the kind of economic growth of about 2 to 4% GDP growth per year that we need to address some of our major economic challenges. And that really underscores the need for metros such as Tshwane, and similar to what we've seen in Johannesburg and in Cape Town, to become, at least to some extent, independent of power provision by Eskom, so that they can, in those metros, begin to grow their own economies.
What's also interesting here, I think, is the fact that, for instance, with a very ambitious and welcomed goal like the acquisition of 1,000 megawatts from IPPs, there comes the issue of transmission. And then, of course, that's an infrastructure question as well. And we know these municipalities also battling quite a bit there with issues of infrastructure, backlogs. And I'm wondering what the conversation is around that, because, the money really will talk a lot than even the plans.
Yes. This was mentioned this morning. So Tshwane does sit with quite a big debtors book when it comes to electricity that it sells to its customers. It's in excess of 20 billion rand, and of this, the city thinks it can collect in the short term about 6 billion. So that is very much part of what they are planning to do with the new focus on energy in the metro, is to also find that solution to the billing problems and payment issues that they have, because it does, as you say, it does sort of just become a much bigger problem when the city is not able to collect what it's due to it, and then it does not have the resources it needs to on the one hand maintain the energy infrastructure that it has, but also then to invest in additional infrastructure that they might need in transmission and distribution if they do want to bring this 1,000 megawatt of independently produced power online.
Well, lots to still happen, Denene. You work in one of the most busy industries in the country. Thank you for your time this afternoon. It's a pleasure speaking to you. That was Denene Erasmus, energy writer for Business Day.